Now that I know that I'm going to be leaving Vietnam within the next few months, I'm looking at the books that I'm currently reading and I'm making some decisions about what's realistic to finish before I leave the country and what's important to me to finish before I leave the country. And anything that I decide is not important to me to finish or not realistic is I'm abandoning. Or in the parlance of BookTube, I am DNFing it. These are books that I did not finish. And I've decided that this book is going to go on my do not finish pile. I've started it, I don't know, like 3 or 4 different times over the past 5 years. This most recent time got up to page 138, which I don't remember how far I got up to on the previous times, about that much, uh, or a little bit less, I don't remember. So this book, I actually started it way back in like June 2018 or July 2018, something like that. I had been meaning to read it for some time because the manager I had at the time uh, really liked this book. He said it was just a very great book for teaching people how to teach speaking, for learning how to do speaking lessons in the ESL classroom. The problem being that, as my manager thought, and as the authors themselves point out in their introduction, that in most ESL classrooms, the speaking lesson is simply just giving the students a prompt and letting them speak without really building up the skill of speaking. So my manager thought they did a really good job of doing this, of describing how to run a speaking lesson. So I've been wanting to read it for some time now. The problem was at that time that this was a book that my manager thought was very useful for teachers, very useful for the Delta, but it didn't actually show up in any of the Delta reading lists that were being published by Cambridge, at least certainly not the one we were using. I was running a book club at the time at my school that was kind of a Delta preparation book club. And we were, because there were other people on the book club besides me, we were choosing books from that list, books that were very clearly geared towards the Delta, and working through one of those a month. And that kind of took up all my reading time for professional development. I tried to squeeze this one in as an additional book, but just didn't have the time to prioritize it. I was already reading books for pleasure or books for my own purposes, and a book for professional development with the Professional Development Book Club. And then that same year, I went to Thailand and Chiang Mai to actually do the Delta. And I actually brought this book with me in my suitcase to Chiang Mai. The intent was I would kind of keep up my professional development reading a little bit when I was doing the Delta, maybe, a few pages before bed or something. But that didn't happen. I was busy enough with enough professional development stuff while doing the Delta. I did, however, use this book on one of my Delta lesson plans. And I've got a copy of that up on one of my other blogs. I'll link to it in the description down below. I ended up citing this book like 7 times in a lesson I did on speaking for Delta Module 2. And in fact, after I finished using this book for speaking, because you only do one lesson for each skill on the Delta. So once I had done my speaking lesson, I was not doing any more speaking lessons for the rest of the course. I lent this book to several of my classmates. I said, this is a really useful book if you're doing a lesson on speaking. And it got passed around, and a number of them found it very useful. Well, actually, I should maybe back up and talk about this book, because you'll probably notice it's a photocopied book here. My apologies to the authors of this book and the publishers. This is just the way a lot of these books are circulating in this part of the world, Southeast Asia, Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, the copyright is not widely respected, and it's very cheap to print this up. I actually didn't print this up myself. I got this out of the school library. It's fallen a little apart a little bit under my care. I've had it for 5 years. I've been carrying around with me during that time. It is somebody who is not me had made some highlights and notes in it with these different colored highlighters. That's not me. That's somebody else who had been using it in the school library at the time I inherited it. So yeah, a lot of the books I've read for professional development over the last 12 years have been photocopied books, for better or for worse. Anyways, once I got back from the Delta Module 2, then it was on to Delta Module 3, in which all my reading list and professional development was revolved around Delta Module 3. And then once I finally finished off Delta Module 3, then it was finally time to I finally felt like I had the ability to take control of my professional development reading once again. But there are a few other books on the back burner that I wanted to get done. Chomsky's Universal Grammar, which had been another book that I had just started and never finished because I got busy with other stuff. And that book was a bear. That took me forever to finish, but I finally did it. And reviewed it on this channel. I'll leave a link to my review in the description down below. And then after that, it was The Linguistic Wars by Randy Allen Harris, which I really wanted to finish after Chomsky's Universal Grammar. And then after that, it was a series of other books that I ended up picking up because of my job. So I had changed jobs by this time, and I was working for, and I'm currently working for, a university where we have to set professional development goals every year. So like I want to really focus on listening in my classroom. I want to focus on reading activities or something like that. And we list ways that we will achieve this goal, and I almost always include reading certain books. But that, again, meant I somewhat lost control of my professional development reading list. I was reading books that aligned with my goals at work, and this was, again, just sitting on my shelves waiting to be picked up again. And then a couple months ago, I picked it up again, and I thought, okay, enough with that. I am going to get through this book again. And I picked it up, and I had an initial good start on it, I think, the first couple weeks I was reading it. But then I've been limping along ever since. I think one of the reasons I've started this book multiple times but have never finished it is a little bit dry to read, in my opinion. And you also, I don't know. If I had given this a chance and read it all the way to the end, maybe I would have picked up some really good techniques for teaching in the classroom. But certainly the front half of it, and I'm about halfway through right now, is all kind of theory about speaking, and there's a promise that this will all become useful knowledge once we get into the later chapters about how to teach speaking. But I just never actually got to the chapters where it comes all together, and found some of this a little bit dry and a little bit difficult to focus on for me. I had trouble forcing myself to pay attention. And I don't know. All that being said, I do think I would have finished it this year. I was committed to getting through with it. Had not my plans evolved, and I'm going to be leaving Vietnam, and I'm not quite sure what my next job will be, and I'm not quite sure if it will involve teaching English as a second language in the future or not. So my it's unclear a little bit what my professional future is and why I'm reading this. Who knows? I could move back to the U.S. and end up getting a job selling insurance or something like that. It would probably be a more stable job than teaching English as a second language. Or I may end up finding a job teaching English as a second language. I don't know, but I don't know. So it's not a priority for me at the moment to finish this, and I'm not motivated. And I've got other books I want to finish before I leave Vietnam. Some of the fiction and historical fiction I'm reading, which I enjoy more. So, yeah, I regret that I never actually got to the end of this book. Certainly, my manager really thought highly of it. So, there's one man's opinion for you. But, yeah.